2024 was a very interesting year for the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo still had a bunch of first-party exclusives. I mean, we got a brand new Zelda, one of the absolute best games of the year, a highly requested remake of a classic Mario RPG in Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Arguably, we got the best Mario Party of all time and the return of a series that many thought was dead in Mario and Luigi. But this year wasn't filled with the usual amount of bangers that we've grown accustomed to. There was some good stuff for sure, but this was by far the lowest rated offerings that we've gotten from Nintendo this entire generation. But was it a bad year for the Nintendo Switch? Far from it. And that's what we're here to talk about today in this 2024 year in review for the Nintendo Switch. What's up, everyone? This is Justin, and welcome to Just Keep Playing. Please join me today as we talk about the truth about the Nintendo Switch in this 2024 year in review. Since 2017, Nintendo has put together an impressive string of banger years that was anchored by at least one major first-party exclusive that would be widely hailed as one of the best games of the year. 2017, we had Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey. 2018, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. 2019, you had Astral Chain, Fire Emblem Three Houses, Luigi's Mansion, to name a few. 2020, you had Animal Crossing and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. 2021, you had Metroid Dread. 2022, you had Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Splatoon 3. And in 2023, you had Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Wonder. Last year was so good that Nintendo was without a doubt the publisher of the year that year. But this year, they aren't anywhere close to claiming that title. That honor, in my opinion, belongs to Atlus. Atlus has had an absolute banger year this year. And they're one of the reasons why Nintendo Switch players had a bunch of good games to play this year. But we'll get to them when we talk about the third-party offerings from this year. In 2024, we are not hearing many of Nintendo's biggest games come up in the conversation for the very best of the year as much as we have in previous years. We have more and more people are starting to spend time on other platforms. Nintendo took home 0 awards at the Game Awards, and only one of the Game of the Year nominees was available to be played on the Nintendo Switch. And yet, in spite of all of that, I still will contend that this has been, all things considered, a really good year for the Nintendo Switch. Sure, you might have to grade it on the curve a little bit, but Nintendo Switch owners were not hurting for good games to play all year long. And we're going to start things off by taking a look at Nintendo's first-party offerings for the Nintendo Switch in 2024. Now, when taking a look at Nintendo's first-party offerings from this year, clearly this wasn't Nintendo's strongest year from a first-party perspective. Their highest-rated game was the Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door remake that came in at a 88 overall on Metacritic, but it is a remake. I know it is probably a brand new game for a lot of people, but it wasn't a completely brand new game. Their highest rated brand new game was The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which in my opinion might be a little underrated, coming in at an 85 overall on Metacritic. But yeah, this wasn't Nintendo's strongest year from a first party perspective when it comes to their overall Metacritic rating. A lot of their games were rated in the 70s or below, and that's definitely not typical for Nintendo in this generation. But it's clear that all of Nintendo's big guns are getting their games ready for the Switch 2. So taking that into account, this is without a shadow of a doubt probably Nintendo's best managed last year of a console, probably of all time. They leveraged their partnerships extremely well and just had a bunch of games just ready to go to hold things down as we wait for the Nintendo Switch 2, most likely next year. I mean, at the end of the day, we got a brand new The Legend of Zelda top down for the first time in over a decade game that was really, really good. It's one of my top games of the year. I'm not quite sure where it's going to land for me yet, if it's my game of the year or not. I'm still finishing up a few games, so we'll see where it lands. But Echoes of Wisdom is really good. And then, as I said before, we got Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, one of the most highly requested remakes from Nintendo this entire generation. People have been asking, begging Nintendo, just give us Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, just give us Thousand Year Door, and we got that. And I had an incredible time playing that game earlier this year. And one of the hallmarks of the Switch era has been the fact, for me, for whatever reason, this system has had me step outside of my comfort zone and try games that I normally wouldn't or just didn't care about before. Games like Animal Crossing and even my beloved Xenoblade. The Switch encouraged me and many others to try games that maybe we normally wouldn't have. And we ended up loving those games because of that. And one of the biggest surprises from this year that benefited from that was Emio the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. I'm not typically a big visual novel type of guy, but I decided to give it a try this year and try this game out. I started with the demo, and the demo did a really good job of getting me hooked and wanting me to dive into the full game. And getting into that full game, we got to experience a really cool story. So if you haven't tried Emio the Smiling Man, I would recommend you check out the demo. The progress does carry over, which again, I love when that happens. So check out Emio the Smiling Man, and you might discover you might like a visual novel as well. So taking that into account, in 2024, there were quite a few releases this year that maybe didn't appeal to the average Nintendo fan, but for those that were willing to step outside of their comfort zones, there was a lot to enjoy in 2024. I do have to say, Princess Peach Showtime was a little disappointing. That game was clearly made for kids, and it wasn't the game that I hoped it would be. It was just okay. Super Mario Party, that's always a good time. But Mario and Luigi, I was really excited for that game, and I know it kind of got a couple reviews that trashed it and everything, but overall, I have really enjoyed my time with that game, and I think that it's been really good. The combat system is incredible in my opinion. I love the gameplay and the combat in Mario and Luigi Brothership. The art style is beautiful, and it really pops on the OLED screen and even on the big screen. I've been really enjoying the game. The writing maybe hasn't been on par as it has been in previous Mario RPG type games, but overall, Mario and Luigi Brothership is also another really good game. So that's been four or five, depending on if you like to count Paper Mario Thousand Year Door since it's a remake, but 4 or 5 really good games that Nintendo published this year. And I think that is pretty good for a system this late in its life cycle. But what do you think? What was your favorite game that Nintendo released in 2024? Let me know in the comments below. But overall, I'd have to give Nintendo's first party offerings in 2024 grading on the curve a very solid B-. But now let's talk about where some of the absolute best games came from to play on the Nintendo Switch this year, and that's from the third parties and indies. Third parties and indies really held things down for Nintendo this year. The Switch has seen some of the best third-party support that any Nintendo system has seen in a very long time, and they really came through for the Switch this year. And it's been a long time since Nintendo's been able to rely on third-party support like that. Nintendo's worked really hard to fix, repair, and grow their third-party relationships during this Switch era, and this year really showed the results of all of that hard work. There were tons of great third-party and indie games to play on the Switch this year. Just to name a few, right now I'm knee-deep in the middle of playing Dragon Quest III, and I am absolutely loving that game. The HD 2D graphic style is just one of my favorite things to come from this era, from this generation, and it looks absolutely beautiful. The production value of it is the HD 2D style perfected, taken to the next level, and the combat in the game is really good and a lot of fun, especially once you find your perfect party that fits your play style. I think right now I'm rolling with the hero, the warrior, the priest, and the monster wrangler, and my team is we're wrecking havoc on these monsters out here. But I've just had an awesome time playing through Dragon Quest III so far. And then we have Unicorn Overlord from Atlus and Vanillaware with that beautiful Vanillaware style. We didn't get a new Fire Emblem this year, and Unicorn Overlord really scratched that itch for me with its strategy gameplay and recruiting units and just helping your units grow, and then just putting a good team together and having one team doing something over here and another team taking care of business over here. It was the perfect blend of that Fire Emblem type strategy mixed with the Ogre Battle strategy type of game, and it was definitely one of my favorites of the year. And it is one, I always have to mention it when I can, it is one that has a demo where the progress carries over to the main game. So if you think that you might be interested in it, you can download the demo off of the eShop right now and check the game out, see how it vibes with you, and then let your progress carry over to the main game once you fall in love with it too. Then another awesome game we got was Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. If you are a fan of Metroidvanias, if you loved Metroid Dread or Ori and the Blind Forest or Hollow Knight or any of the other classic Metroidvania games that have come out on the Switch, you owe it to yourself to play Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. It is an awesome game, and it goes toe-to-toe with the very best Metroidvanias on the Switch. It goes toe-to-toe with Metroid Dread, which Metroid Dread was my game of the year back in 2021 when that came out. I absolutely love that game. So for me to put a game on the same level as Metroid Dread speaks to how high quality that game is. It has really good combat. I love the combat in the game. It flows and it's smooth, and you just really feel in control of what you're doing with the parrying and the being able to dodge and slide. And I really love the combat. It has some cool music, and just the style of it is really cool, and it has good voice acting, a nice cinematic style to it with stuff going on in the background and the foreground, and you being able to see your team handling their business while you're handling your business. And it's just a really good Metroidvania game, and it has some pretty good accessibility options, and it adds its own innovations to the Metroidvania genre that I would love to see the next Metroid game adopt. So Prince of Persia, it didn't get the love that it should have gotten this year, so I definitely want to put that game out there. And if you haven't played it, I highly recommend you checking that one out. Then we have one of the Game of the Year nominees back at the Game Awards with Balatro, the roguelike poker game that is just so addicting that you got people putting 90, 100 plus hours in it just because it's just can be such a addicting time sink where you just, I got one more run, I can do one more run, I can do a better run. Plucky Squire, I love the art style in that game and its Zelda inspiration. It was definitely one of the standout games from this year. And then you had Capcom granting gamers their dream come true with finally bringing Marvel vs. Capcom 2, getting that back out on modern platforms thanks to the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. You had Konami finally remembering that they have games that people love, and with them giving us the Castlevania Dominus Collection with the collection of the Castlevania games back from the DS era, which are just some really good games that are on par with another one of the greatest Metroidvanias of all time, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So just, there were a lot of good games. There was so much that I didn't have enough time in what was supposed to be a down year to play all of the games that I wanted to, with games like Power Rangers Rita Rewind that just came out. But I'm going to check that game out and put some time in that. You had Trails Through Daybreak that came out earlier this year, and Fantasia Neo Dimension, which that is another one that has a demo that just came out. So I'm definitely going to check that out. But there was a lot of really good games to play this year. Switch owners were not hurting for good games to choose from, thanks to third-party and indie games. So on the third-party and indie side of things, I think I would have to give that a grade of, that was a strong B+, A- this year on the indie side, on the third-party and indie side of things. So a lot of good games to choose from. But let me know, what was your favorite game from your favorite third-party game or favorite indie game to come out on the Switch this year? Let me know in the comments below. Nintendo Switch Online was another tool that Nintendo used to keep Switch fans happy this year by putting some highly requested and anticipated games on the service this year, especially on the expansion pack side of things. It started off the year strong by giving us one of the most requested game series on the service, with the Golden Sun series making an appearance. Every 2D Metroid game now is available on Nintendo Switch Online, minus the Samus Returns remake, now that they added Metroid Zero Mission on the service. And then we got more rare goodness with Killer Instinct coming out earlier this year, Banjo-Tooie that just came out not too long ago, and the biggest one for me, the one that I have been waiting for the most since they dropped the N64 as part of the expansion pack, and that was Perfect Dark. I was so excited and happy and hyped when they announced Perfect Dark was coming to the service. As soon as it was available, I immediately did a playthrough of that game with my N64 controller, and I love the game today just as much as I did back in the day when it first came out. It is still one of my favorite games of all time, and I had such a good time. It was just such a fun trip down memory lane replaying that game earlier this year. And they've just been doing a bunch of cool random drops all throughout this last part of the year with just what randomly we got all of the Mega Man Game Boy games. Now we got all of the Donkey Kong Land games on the Game Boy part of the service. And we even got Vector Man on the Genesis side of things. I loved Vector Man back in the day on the Genesis. That was one of my favorite Genesis games. So on the Nintendo Switch Online side of things, they definitely did a lot of cool things to keep fans of their classic games happy, and to maybe introduce new fans to that part of their history. So with Nintendo Switch Online, I have to give that a strong B+ for this year. So you add all of that up, a B- for Nintendo's first-party games, an A- for third parties and indies, and a solid B+ for the Nintendo Switch Online offerings. And that adds up to an overall pretty good year of gaming on the Nintendo Switch, especially for what was supposed to be a down year. Yes, it was a bit of a down year in terms of Nintendo's offerings. It wasn't the best year ever, filled with AAA bangers from Nintendo. There was no huge Tears of the Kingdom type of game, but we got some solid offerings from Nintendo with a really good brand new top-down Zelda game in Echoes of Wisdom, and a highly requested remake in Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Third parties came through holding things down, and Nintendo gave us a lot of fun stuff on Nintendo Switch Online. So for me, 2024 is probably sitting right there with 2020 in the ranking of Switch years, but in my opinion, I don't think that there's been a bad year for the Switch. Definitely there have been years that were not as strong as others, but there's always been some pretty good games to choose from every year. But for 2024, overall, I'd have to give this year, 2024, a solid B. But what would you give this year? What is your grade for the Nintendo Switch in 2024? Let me know in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching. And for more Nintendo and Nintendo Switch gaming discussion and conversation, please hit that like and subscribe button. And until next time, I'll see you later. Have a good one. Peace.